What is going on, people? We hope y'all are doing good. We hope y'all are doing great. Welcome back to another Friday Eve, as Derl likes to call it, edition of the Derl and Kev NBA show for tonight on this beautiful Thursday evening on Thursday, January 24th, 2021. I am, of course, Kevin Reyes. I am, of course, joined by my good friend Daryl Rice from the Breakdown Sports. Daryl, how's it going, my man? How you doing?
I am good, man. Yeah, it is Friday Eve. It's been a long week, long night last night. Didn't have a lot of sleep, but good games. Been really good ball this week. A lot of stuff that's actually happened in the past couple of days. And once again, Kev, just happy to be talking about ball, man. Happy to be back on with you.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, as we talked about on Monday, it's the best time to be a basketball fan. We got some great up and coming young stars showing out. Some really good teams left, like all four solid teams left in the conference
Mm-hmm.
finals. Atlanta, Milwaukee tipped off. It's a solid series. It tipped off, yesterday, and then of course Phoenix and LA continues tonight. We will be talking about those two series as we go along. But as you mentioned at the top, a lot of news going out outside of the basketball being played on the court. So
Mm-hmm.
we will get to that. Of course, the draft is right around the corner. Draft combine started. Draft combine scrimmages started today. So a lot of basketball going on in, I believe, Chicago. So it's an exciting time to be a basketball fan and a draft analyst and all that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, coaching. Let's get to
Yes.
some coaching news as we talked about it on Monday. With all these vacancies available, there are now two less vacancies available in
Mm-hmm.
the association. With the two most recent news, one happening, I believe, yesterday, and then the second one happening today, with the Boston Celtics and Indiana Pacers each finding their new head coaches for hopefully the foreseeable future. We'll start it with the most recent one being the Indiana Pacers, who signed former Dallas coach Rick Carlisle to a 4-year contract. Contracts don't matter with coaches because most of them don't last the actual contract. So the Pacers sign Rick Carlisle. Of
Mm-hmm.
course, Carlisle coached the decade plus with the Mavs, re-signed along with
Mm-hmm.
Donnie Nelson. By the way, the Mavs might be close to finding their new GM, and apparently Jason Kidd is close to being the new head coach. So we may or may not talk about that when we're done with these two. One less vacancy might be available over the course of the show. But with what's set in stone, Pacers get Carlisle. Carlisle comes back to
Mm-hmm.
Indy. He was a top assistant when Larry Bird was there coaching. And then when Larry Bird was there as the team president, he was their head coach from 2004 through 2003 through 2007, if I'm not mistaken. So he comes back there to hopefully lead a contending team. Of course, we were talking about Indy, and they're going to look to compete. They still have that core of Brogdon, Warren, Sabonis, and Turner, and then they have a lottery pick. Draft lottery order was determined, so we'll be talking about that later. But that's a solid team, and they get a veteran head coach who, as we talked about on Monday, like skyrocketed up to the top of the head coaching free agency, and now he's gone. Like, what do you think of the signing for Indy?
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack. And one thing that I know for sure is that if there is such thing as coaching tampering, this was it. Okay, I'm telling you, man, everything about this tells me that it was more abysmal and disastrous in Dallas than what we really know. I'm telling you that now. When I basically stated that I believe Cuban had a meeting with Carlisle and he had a meeting with Luka. Carlisle said it's either me or Luka, and Luka told him the same thing. It's either Carlisle or me, and obviously Luka was chosen. The Pacers right now are in probably the best position they've been in a while. With this head coach, and I think you have a good systems play with Carlisle, or good systems players with Carlisle being the head coach, to be honest. I believe, and this is what I tweeted earlier, that it's really funny that Carlisle decided to leave a superstar and coach a team. right? You could see where Carlisle's head's at. He doesn't want to have just one superstar that you got to force feed the ball to. He wants to have his method. He's got a proven method. And, at this rate, Dallas is trying to go a different direction. So all in all, with Carlisle leaving and going to Indy so quickly, I believe it was talked about. It was mentioned behind the scenes. You hear about talk with players, right? But there are so many more players than coaches. So when stuff leaks out about players, well, obviously you got more ears and more mouths involved. But when coaches talk, it's such a smaller circle, right? That you really don't know how pre-planned this has been. You don't know if these coaches have already been talking to each other and saying, you know what, man, Luke is a problem. I don't want to deal with him. So I say all that to say, I believe that there was talks because Carlisle does not want to have anything to do with Luka. And once it was decided that Luka was the guy, Carlisle got on the phone, made a call, and he was in Indy in no time. He got to go wherever he wanted to go. And it sucks that it went down that way, but that's the way it went down. And I believe right now Carlisle has elevated that team. That team is right now going to be very good next year.
Yeah, and the signing was done very low key. Like usually when a head coach signing is gonna occur, there's usually rumblings or rumors or chit chat here and there. But this just came out this morning, and it was like the Pacers are signing Carlisle to a 4-year contract, like out of nowhere. And it was, one, very good that they did it low key and nothing got out. But then two, as I mentioned, like those connections that he had built with Indy in his previous 2 stints had to have played a factor with, his signing. And to your point, I think something that goes, unnoticed with Carlisle by a lot of people is that he is shown over the years that he can adjust his coaching schemes and his style to whatever the team needs. So, obviously these past 2 years with Luka, it's been give the ball to Luka and everyone get out of the way and he's going to be creating. But that hasn't been his style every single time. Like when Dirk was there, it wasn't give the ball to Dirk and everyone get out of the way. Like Dirk got some shine, Jason Kidd got some shine. JJ Barea got some shine out. He had a lot of guards that, could create off the pick and roll. Devin Harris 1 year, Monte Ellis. So like he can get the best out of those guys and he can find the ways to get everyone involved. And so you look at Indy, you got Brogdon, you got Sabonis. That's a 1-2 punch. You got LeVert, who played some really good basketball when he was healthy in Indy last year. You're going to have Turner. So that's the defensive anchor. I'm, to your point, really excited about what the Pacers can do in terms of like the personal relationships and the team building was something that, according to the reports, Bjorkgren lacked. Nate Bjorkgren, their former coach.
Yes, he did.
Carlisle's a veteran. He's been around. So he knows how to deal with that sort of stuff. And, that's not a young group, but that's not an old group. That's a group that's been together for a couple of years now in Indy. So I feel like they're going to have a good job, a good time in getting that buy-in. And so they're still not a contender, but that's more because of roster construction. That's not any individual's fault. Well, the GM or that sort of stuff. But, they're really good. They're going to be a 6th, 7th, 8th seed. Again, they still have some moves to make now in free agency. TJ McConnell, I believe, is a free agent. Doug McDermott is a free agent. That one I know for sure. So some decisions to make in Indy, but they got the trickiest one out of the way. Getting that veteran in the bench, that is a good step in the right direction for the Pacers. And I'm really excited to see what happens. And then on the Dallas front, saw the report about the GM. Nothing has come out yet that I am aware. But according to Mark Stein, since we're talking about Dallas, Mark Stein tweeted out the Mavericks had opened contract negotiations with Jason Kidd to be their next head coach, with support from their leading but not yet identified top candidate for head of basketball operations. So since we're talking about Dallas, if Jason Kidd ends up being the Dallas Mavericks head coach, what do you think about that?
Well, he already got the graces from Carlisle, right? Like Carlisle said he would work perfectly because he, and is it Luka, are kind of the same player? Is that so? I think he gave the graces and the reins to Jason. They're really trying to get Kidd in and he's really having a hard time getting in, but he just might be able to get into Dallas. They basically forced him out of Portland because of his record of battery, assaulting women, right? And it was the women that had gotten together in Portland and pretty much ran him out of there to where he reconsidered and withdrew his name as a candidate from Portland. So what this is saying is that they really don't have that much confidence just yet in Mobley, right? Is that Jason Mobley? Who I believe and who I thought that's who Luka actually liked. So if that's the case, I don't know. I don't know if Jason Kidd is the best coach or Jamal Mosley is his name. But according to what Carlisle is saying, he is the best coach. I don't know, to be honest with you. I'll just leave it at that. Kidd has an impressive resume. He's a great coach. He's been a great player. He's to me, he's better than Nash, so maybe he's able to coach today's NBA, right? This fast passing, shooting NBA. So all in all, that I hope it works out, but I'm not too high on it just yet, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, like besides Carlisle, he had according to reports, the approval of Dirk and other people that were advising Mark Cuban in that quest. He also played with Dallas, obviously won a championship with them in 2011, and debuted with them. Played with them in the late 90s, early 2000s, then played with them in the early 2010s. Late 2000s, and of course got the championship in 2011. So he has that experience with Dallas. His first coaching stint in Milwaukee didn't go that well. It's funny because what they're talking about with Luka is because of the similarities in their play style, and of course Jason and Luka, two ball dominant guards, were great distributors, great rebounders, great finishers, somewhat solid jumper, but it's funny because when he got to Milwaukee, when he got the job in Milwaukee, it's the only head coaching job he's had. The same similarities were made between him and Giannis, and where he could develop Giannis as a ball handler and a tall distributor and that sort of thing. And it didn't quite work out that well, but everyone deserves their second chances. I feel like he can be okay. And my understanding of the situation is that it's less about getting the right coach, but like someone that can develop a relationship with Luka and keep him happy. That's sort of my interpretation of what this search is about. And again, like associating it with the Carlisle comments that you pointed out that he made on talking about Jason Kidd having things in common with Luka, judging by the reports of Carlisle's and Luka's relationship being sort of tense, I don't know how to judge those comments. I don't know if those comments are positive. I don't know if there's a slight in there. I don't know, but I think, people saying that Jason Kidd shouldn't get a job because he's a head coach, like, dude can improve. Last time he coached was in 17.
The Nets. Wasn't
right.
it the Nets? I always look back to Kidd as coaching the Nets, and I'm gonna confirm that, but I'm almost sure it was the Nets. It was a short stint with the Nets.
Yeah. So by that time, like everything that's happened since then, he's been an assistant. He's seen other people's perspective, and he's won a championship. So stuff can change. Like, people talk about players developing. Like coaches can develop. Coaches can improve too.
Absolutely.
They're humans, and they can, improve their strategies and improve their ways of thinking. So, hey, I don't know. We'll see what happens with Jason Kidd, who last coached in 2018 with the Milwaukee Bucks. First coached the Nets, then coached the Bucks. Yeah, you're right about the short stint. He first coached the Nets, and then he coached the Bucks. You referenced Jason Kidd as someone who has been looking for a job for a while and hasn't really gotten that door open for him. The same can be said. I would amplify that saying for Ime Udoka, who is now the head coach of the Boston Celtics. Like Udoka's a guy, He's been an assistant his entire career. This is his first head coach job.
Hmm.
He's an
Hmm.
ex-player, ex-role player, nothing too fancy, no over double-digit points. He was just
Hmm.
there, played 7 years in the league and in other pro leagues around the world as well. Has been a top assistant for like 9 years at this point.
Hmm.
Spent 7 with the Spurs with Pop and that whole coaching tree that is filled with current head coaches and past head coaches over the past couple of years. Uh, Coached last year with the 76ers and then this year with the Brooklyn Nets and Steve Nash's coaching staff. Throughout the years, it was really, when you look at head coaching vacancies, it was so and so, so and so, so and so, and then Ime Udoka. He was always in the conversation, never quite got the opportunity. Now, with Brad Stevens as the head of basketball operations in Boston, he finally gets a chance. What are your thoughts on that?
Um, well, for what it's worth, man, Jason Williams' Twitter did not get hacked. All right. He just didn't know what the hell he was
Yeah,
talking
that
about.
was a very
That was so
dumb.
bad.
That was so
I
dumb.
mean,
For
Kenneth,
reference, for those that don't know, Jason Williams, ESPN analyst, okay, tweeted out that along the lines of Ime Udoka was the first black coach in Boston Celtics history. And I don't know much about Boston Celtics history, but I can name 3 off the top of the dome, and it's
hey, man, hey, what is I forget his name, Yoski or whatever. He just be like, your boy. I don't know, man. It's like, hey, I don't want no problems with that, Jay. Just, all you had to be like was, yo, I'm wrong with this. So yeah, just a little humor to Boston. So this is what I was thinking, man. I was thinking this, and this is me just being a mean person. I'm like, yo, did Boston just be like, yo, we need to get a black? We need to get a black real quick because all the shit that been popping off about us being racist. So I don't know if this was like, I don't want to say a charity move because there are more than enough black coaches that are not head coaches in the NBA that are not coaching right now that deserve that spot that Ime has gotten. But I just say it from the terms of higher ups. Like, did they make a charity case here, or is this Brad Stevens really looking at a good coach? He's got a good resume. He's got a great resume. He is a Portland boy, born and bred. Went to Portland, Jefferson High School. Went to San Francisco, then back to Portland. Like you said, he played for a little bit. But all in all, man, I personally believe this was a good look. This was a good look for Boston because of the players that you have that are so, if anything, they're so charged. They're aware of their surroundings. They're aware, and when I say they, I'm saying the players are aware of how they fit into society. They are aware of the words they use can come back on them. And the worst thing a player can have is the belief that their coach doesn't think like they do, right? That their coach really don't have their back. For what it's worth, that's not who Brad Stevens is, right? I think he's moved right into the role that he really wants to be in. And I think that's why you saw a regression from the Celtics, because you had, just like you just talked about, coaches evolving, right? You can incline or decline, right? So you can regress, and you kind of saw that. Maybe you just saw Stevens losing motivation. But to hire this coach, to me, man, is a power move. That's a power move, if you ask me, because the Celtics, in my opinion, especially Tatum and Brown, are going to identify with this coach a lot better, a hell of a lot better. And I know it's a long-winded way of saying that this is probably the best coach right now for the Celtics. A young Nigerian, he's Nigerian American, right? Like, so you need this type of identity. You need this type of charge. You need the motivation out of your players. You got rid of your cancer with Kimba, and it's time to go to work again.
In terms of, I completely agree with everything you say, and I'll add on to it. But before that, in terms of the X's and O's, we can't really determine that. Again, as I said, it's his first head coaching gig, so we don't know what type of things he likes to run. But the most important thing, to your point, he's a good human. He's a great person in a locker room. Like, from what I've read, nothing negative has been said about Udoka as an
Hmm.
assistant coach. I even read a quote about Pop and how sometimes Pop would send him to talk to players and engage their, and have conversations with them. And Pop would say like he's better at the relationships than I am. And Pop has been heralded as someone who treats all of his players 1 through 15 the same. So
Hmm.
for him to have that praise of Udoka is amazing. And Udoka, to your point, is young. He's in his early 40s. For head coaches, that's young. He's the same age as Brad Stevens, who, when Brad came on to Boston, he was the youngest head coach in the league. So they're near the same age. Udoka has been deserving for a while now for a job and finally gets one in Boston. And I
Hmm.
feel like that's something that he can keep there because Boston has been a stable in terms of their coaches historically, like with Red Auerbach, Bill Russell, Casey Jones, even Doc Rivers. Like he stayed there for a while, then Doc left. Brad came in, and Brad's been there for like 6-7 years. So Boston
Hmm.
isn't a franchise historically that is constantly changing head coaches. So I
Yeah.
feel like, to your point, it's the perfect fit for Boston, and it's a perfect fit for Udoka, who can come into an established franchise, obviously with their stars and Tatum
Hmm.
and Brown, who are going to do their thing regardless of coaching. And so the crux of his job will be to kind of keep those relationships going. And, in a city, in a franchise like Boston, who
Hmm.
can be contending for a couple of years now, that's going to be needed.
Hmm.
And, again, in terms of the schemes and the plays and whatever, that'll be determined, obviously. But he's a great human. He's a great coach. He's a great person behind the locker room, in the locker room, I should say. So I think he'll be okay. And I like the signing for the Celtics and
Yeah.
for Udoka as well. Like he finally gets a job. Like to your point, black coaches finally getting opportunities. And like
Hmm.
this, like here's my thing: coaches shouldn't be judged because of their, ethnicity, gender, or
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever. But the fact
Absolutely.
of the matter is that it's been happening. Like you
Yeah.
see black coaches getting short leashes and white coaches getting infinite opportunities.
You see,
And,
it's the Rooney Rule, right? We wouldn't have the Rooney Rule in football to where you have to interview a person of color before you hire another coach. Come on.
yeah, and like it shouldn't be about ethnicity. Like if the best candidate is white, then the best candidate is white. If the best candidate is black, the best candidate is black. If the best candidate is female, the best candidate is female.
Absolutely.
But it's great to see that tide turning, and obviously, like from this year, I was actually reading and I found this stat that, well, not the stat, this fact that's like out there, but I didn't realize it before reading it. Three
Hmm.
of the four teams that are in the conference finals have a black head coach, with
Yes.
Monty
Yes.
Williams in Phoenix, Ty
Yeah.
Lue in LA, and Nate McMillan in
Nate
Atlanta.
McMillan. Hmm. Hmm.
So now Udoka finally getting a chance. Darvin Ham, he's another assistant coach who for years has been, in conversations to get a job. He's in negotiations with a variety of teams. You got Becky Hammond, who is bound to get a job. I read she's in the final phase of the Portland interviews. You got in New Orleans Fred Benson, who's black, Teresa Weatherspoon, who's black and female.
Right. Hmm.
So you got a lot of people, very talented individuals, regardless of ethnicity or gender, that are finally getting chances, and we'll get a chance to prove themselves to see if they're good
Right.
or not. And
Right.
Udoka, after like a decade now, can
Hmm.
finally get that opportunity. And Chauncey, I
Yeah.
forgot to mention Chauncey. He's also in the conversation as well. Like a lot of talented individuals in conversations for head coaching jobs right now.
It should be some first in line guys. So yeah, the funny thing is, if he didn't go to Boston, man, I wouldn't have been surprised if he would have went to Portland, back home.
Right. Yeah, he was one of the guys that was in that conversation. I think he was another guy who was in the final stages of interviewing,
Hmm.
along with Becky, along with Chauncey. I don't know if I'm confusing him and Chauncey. I
It
don't know,
might have
but
been
there was
Chauncey.
someone in
Yeah.
there. Yeah, for sure. So now again, Dallas hasn't officially signed their head coach, but all signs point to it being Jason Kidd as we speak, with Tim McMahon just tweeting right now that the Mavericks are progressing in talks to make Jason Kidd the franchise's new head coach. And
Wow.
Mavericks owner Mark Cuban is also close to hiring a new head of basketball operations who has signed off on the Kidd candidacy. Okay, so you have any predictions before we move on? Do you have any predictions on who this head of basketball operations might be?
No, the thing is it's not an experienced guy. I think it's going to be just some green dude. That he's got a resume, of course. You know, Cuban's not playing Shark Tank with his team.
Right.
But it's not going to be like some Jerry West, you know, some kind of Presty Myers type of guys, you know, nothing like that at all. I think he's going to be probably a step under, and I always think of his name, the guy in Toronto, Ujiri, a step under Ujiri, right? To where he's going to have a natural knack to know how to bring some set pieces, because that's definitely what Dallas needs. They need some set pieces. You gave away Seth, right? You should have gave away KP. You're going to need some set pieces, first off, who are going to want to come to Dallas. So a lot to be made in the offseason with this team. Kind of curious to see how it goes. But my opinion, I don't know if you get somebody like a Jerry West, like I said, somebody who's just been in the game in the top level for a long time. You know, I don't think you see that. So I'm going to be curious here.
And it's been weird because there hasn't been reports of people. Like, the only person I remember reading that was being considered was Michael Finley, who is in the front office, was a former player with the Mavs.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only guy that's been pointed at being in the conversation. So besides him, I don't have any other guesses. Like, I would have to say him, but
could you see some kind of sideways move with, okay, as a matter of fact, now that he's been an advisor, we're just going to make Dirk Nowitzki head of basketball operations.
That could happen.
And that's what I'm saying. You're going to get somebody with that type of resume, player, but probably has more of a front office, you know, experience. So maybe a couple years experience under someone like a Myers or a Presty or a Jerry West, something like that, you know? So just a new face to that part of the office or business, but not new as far as him operating in that position.
Right. But, you know, whatever, nothing has come out officially, but what is known right now is that Kidd will probably be the new head coach of Dallas, and they'll also announce a new head of basketball operations. Who is it? I have no idea, but I'm checking my phone, so if it comes out during the live, then we'll definitely talk about it. There are 5 vacancies left as of now, with the Wizards, Orlando Magic, New Orleans Pelicans, and Portland Trailblazers. Oh, 4. I was not counting the Mavericks because they're signed Jason Kidd. So we got Washington, Orlando, New Orleans, and Portland left. Portland, I last read, they're in the final interviews, and then the 3 others, I haven't read anything at all. So we'll be interesting to see what happens with those other jobs. You got a combination of, you know, possible contenders with New Orleans. I mean, possible teams that are going to be competing with Portland, whatever happens with Dame, New Orleans with Zion and BI. You got Washington, depending on what happens with Beal and whatever happens with Westbrook, and then a clear rebuilding situation with Orlando. So those will be interesting situations to monitor there.
I personally, I'm really curious to see how Orlando moves, right? Because you basically have a clean, fresh canvas. You could start from scratch. So I want to see where Orlando goes. I want to see where Portland goes too, because you can't think that Dame isn't going to have some kind of say, because you got to pay him first, right? He's due for that max, but you got to keep him. Now, it doesn't seem like it's really hard to keep him, because at this level, he's like 45 minutes from home, you know? So he could just hop on a PJ and fly to Oakland if he wants to. There's nothing wrong about him staying in Portland and just being loyal to the soil, if you will. So I'm curious to see what they put to basically command Dame, right? Because there's some serious issues with that roster, right? So there's a lot going on. Orlando, I'm excited about. Hopefully, get a young guy in there. And then the Wizards, that's kind of scary too, personally, because you still don't know what's going to go on with Bill, right? You still have a really great roster, but you're going to have to still run it around Westbrook. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? They did pretty good this year for what it's worth. For it being a COVID season, for players being injured, no real chemistry. You give them this off year. If you have a coach with a good system, man, I can see Wizards being even better. So I'm curious about those, to be honest, Kev. I really want to see what Orlando does. If they also go with youth, right? Because you got a fresh, clean canvas. If Portland goes with someone that's going to enable Dame to stay, because you got to give him the money. I think he's like at 50, right? 50 M's you got to give him. You're paying Ben Simmons 41 M's next year. You better pay Dame 50. So you got to pay him and keep him. And then, lastly, all right, what really will the Wizards do? Do you put someone that's going to be able to control Westbrook, but someone also partial to Beal? Because Beal could be out, right? We were talking about him being traded the middle of the season, and he's basically like, fuck all y'all. So you've got to do something with that also. So there's got to be a coach who's able to still coach and get the respect of Westbrook and Beal. So it's not going to be someone young. Right? It won't be someone young like you're going to put or could put in Orlando. So curious about those three teams.
Yep, and those will be stuff that will definitely be monitored throughout the offseason. And, of course, the Dallas thing, which I said, whatever comes out, I'll definitely read it out to y'all. But with all of that aside, let's get to the action that has happened on the court in the past couple of days. Briefly, we got the Eastern Conference Finals that began yesterday. Game 1 in Milwaukee between the Hawks and the Bucks. Many people saying this series is going to be a wash, that the Bucks should dominate. That's including myself. But the Bucks did not execute well in Game 1. They were looking solid in the first half. Got outscored 34-26 in the third quarter, and they lost by 3, 116-113. The Hawks were led by Trae Young, who continues to amaze in his first playoff run. 48 points. 7 rebounds and 11 assists. John Collins chipped in with 23 points and 15 rebounds. For the Bucks, Giannis had 34 points and 12 rebounds. Drew Holiday had 33 points and 10 assists. Chris Middleton didn't have that great of a game, and he missed the 3-point shot at the end to tie. So the Hawks, for the third round in a row, steal Game 1 on the road. Did it in round 1 at MSG. Did it in round 2 at Philly, and now do it in the Eastern Conference Finals against the heavily favored Milwaukee Bucks. What do you see last night in Game 1?
First off, Kev, why are you saying stolen? It's almost like you're not respecting Atlanta.
A combination. It's a combination of not respecting them, and then in terms of like how they match up against the Bucks. Like if the Bucks were playing how they should be playing, they should have won that game.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. So I'll say this. First off, Bucks aren't even playing this fucking game if Kevin Durant is wearing his natural shoe size, right? If you're talking about a game of inches, that was literally a game of inches, right? Where it's the final shot and they're up by 1 point and they win the game. Goes in overtime basically he stops that whole traction of that game, and he honestly thought it was a 3. He thought it was a 3. He thought he had it. So we're not even talking about the Bucks playing in the ECF, bro.
Yeah, and outside of that, like the process that entire series was horrible. Like to be clear, I'm heavily favoring the Bucks in this series, but I still, to this day, to this very moment, close to 8 p.m. Eastern on this Thursday, June 24th, I still have no idea how the Bucks are here. I still don't know how the Bucks season is alive. So for the record.
Yeah. Okay. And that's good. Point taken. I will mark that record. Here's the reason I say Atlanta's being disrespected, because Milwaukee scraped by with an injury-riddled Nets, bro. The most favorited players for Brooklyn were not playing. James Harden's playing on one leg. They can run no fast breaks through James Harden. That takes away a lot of your offense, right? You can't ISO him. They didn't even have to play defense on him. To a certain degree, they didn't have to press him, right? So, and you barely screech out of that game. That's fine, man. That's fine. They're in it, right? But don't tell me that Atlanta isn't good enough to beat them a couple of games because of what they just did to Philly. And I think Philly has a better defense if everyone's healthy than Milwaukee. I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. I said this yesterday. In order for Milwaukee to win, Middleton and Lopez have to go off because they have to match that firepower that Atlanta has. Kev, what's our favorite word? Ad nauseum. Have we not been talking, or let's not even say we, have I not been talking about the offensive firepower that Atlanta has and can give you on any given night? Ad nauseum, dude. Ad nauseum. And that's what you saw happen. They could not match that momentum. They couldn't match those shots. And then you just start reaching. And then the game gets out of hand. Giannis is going to get his work, man. He's going to earn his check. What you didn't, and I guarantee you, what the viewers and fans of the NBA was not thinking was that Drew was going to contribute more on offense than defense. You know what I'm saying? So, and I get it. I totally get the whole Middleton thing, right? But I'm not a Middleton stan, bro. Like, I'm not that convinced. I saw some funny shit, man. It's like any Chris who spells his name with the K is suspect. For real. Somebody tweeted that out, man. But you really got to look at it that way. Because they did not have the firepower to match Atlanta. And the issue that I see is, first off, you got to match that firepower. But the second thing is the depth of how they give you that fucking firepower, which means if you're going to put bodies on Trey. And Chuck, if you watched TNT, the post show, bro, there's like, you got to do something with Trey. You got to put a body on him or something, man. You just don't let him do what he wants. Trey passed the ball. He got boards and he put up points. He did whatever he wanted to do, man. He did whatever he wanted to do. And if you got someone who can do that, what I've said that he did against Philly, because it was primarily Embiid, I saw it. And what he's doing with Milwaukee, Kev, is he is keeping the defenses honest. He's keeping them honest, bro. Because when he comes in for that Capella pick and roll, and Capella rolls, or even Collins rolls, they're already dropping on Trey. They're dropping back because, first off, they don't want to press him to foul him, one, and they get in foul trouble because he is getting people in foul trouble, right? But they also want to protect the lob that's going to possibly come over. And so Trey makes those split decisions in which you're either going to commit to him and he's going to lob that over, or you're going to stand back on him and he's going to throw that teardrop one-stepper. There's no answer for that the Bucks have right now. So the only thing the Bucks can do, bro, is make their shots so that they stay on the same level. Giannis will go off. Trust me. Now, for what it's worth, and there were some terrible calls in that game, bro. There were some bad calls in that game. And so I wouldn't be surprised if you see the Bucks come out and smack them now because the whistles are not as loose. Right. So what I got to say about the Hawks is I've been on the Hawks for a long time. Am I saying the Hawks are winning it all? No. But you just can't go around discrediting a team that you could get work from Gallinari, Herter, Capella, and Collins as 1A and 1B. You've heard me say that, right? Just put them together. And Trey Young, dog. We're not talking about Lemon Pepper Lou. You know, we're not talking about Reddish, I think, is coming back, or Hunter's coming back. These guys are deep, dog. That's all I'm saying, man. All I'm saying. So how it looks, you are right when you said that they are lucky and that they, being Milwaukee, they're lucky to be where they are, and that's why they better take these games serious because they could be out in 7 games.
If there was ever a year for the Bucks to make the finals, it was this year. They got the 3 seed.
Right.
They faced a hobbled Nets team. Somehow lasted 7. Like they should have won earlier. They got the 7, and they, for the life of me, somehow won that game. How, I have
Hmm.
no idea. And now they're playing a Hawks team that the Bucks, yeah, the Hawks are deeper than the Bucks, but the Bucks are more top heavy than the Hawks. Like Giannis, Drew, and Chris, if they attack properly, and that was the thing they had in Brooklyn that they didn't do, that really rubbed me the wrong way, that really pissed me off, is that they have the capacity to attack mismatches every single time down the floor. Like Drew can post up. Chris Middleton can post up. He can hit tough shots. PJ Tucker can crash the boards and defend. Brook Lopez can attack in the post and he can space in the perimeter. Giannis can attack and do whatever in the paint. So like they have whatever to, in this particular matchup, attack Trae Young every time down the court. But there are plays where Giannis just forced something to the rim and Trae was just able to rest standing near the baseline, not doing anything. There were times where the Bucks spacing was horrifically horrible. And like Chris Middleton missed a lot of shots, but the thing
He
with Chris
did.
Middleton is that he takes the same shots. He's taking a contested jumper. Sometimes it falls, sometimes it doesn't, because that's the nature of taking tough shots. Now, you could argue Bud could get him better looks, which is fair, but that's just the way Middleton has been playing the past 2 years. Sometimes he's making them, sometimes he's missing them. It is what it is. Like, to his credit, he missed some. I mean, to his fault, he missed a lot of easy looks, shots that he should be making. So that's kind of whatever on that
Yeah,
point.
yeah,
But
that's a whole
it,
different discussion when we're talking about Bud, Kev. You know it.
yeah, for sure. But I mean, the Bucks should have won last night. And what happened is, to your point, like Trae Young just got whatever he wanted. But I will counter with saying the Bucks can do a lot of things to defend Trae Young better. You're obviously not stopping him. Trae Young is a superstar. You're not stopping. Trae Young is a star. You're not stopping stars. You can only hope to contain him. So what was happening with Trae is that, yeah, Brook was in a deep drop, like super deep, not even remotely close to contesting. And like, I just don't get, like, in parts. Like, one, I don't get that. Like, Brook is 7 feet. Trae Young is 6 feet in shoes.
Hmm.
Like, if Brook is not literally under the basket, if he's near the free throw line and he jumps, he can affect that shot. He can affect that job. And not to be tough on short guys, but it's just how physics work. Like, Brook is a whole feet taller than him. He can affect that shot. So I didn't understand the deep drop, even when the floaters were dropping and he just stayed in the deep drop. And then he committed, the weak side wasn't there, and the lobs and the dump offs to Capella and Collins opened up. So that was a whole another issue. But then mainly, like, how they defended the screens. Like, Drew Holiday, as great as a defender as he is, just had some really, really bad possessions navigating screens. Like, he got caught on the screen and he took like a whole 5 seconds to get back into Trae's body. And Trae just got off the screen and got an easy runway to a floater or a
Hmm.
jumper.
Hmm.
And there was even a stretch where they were going under screens and they allowed him to shoot open
Yeah,
threes.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
that
yeah.
really didn't make sense to me either. So there's a whole lot of things to tighten up, but the main thing is be more physical on Trae, be higher up defending the screens. Like, you can still be in a drop because you
Hmm.
can't, to your point, you can't open up the lob, you can't open up the backside. So stay in a drop, but not that deep of a drop. But then mainly just attack the mismatches. Like, they stayed with the same starting lineup, and Trae Young was either on PJ Tucker, on Pat Connaughton, or on Bryn
Hmm.
Forbes. All
Okay,
three of
okay.
those guys can be used to attack Trae. Like, PJ can attack the offensive boards. You can give him a couple of post touches. He can set
Hmm.
screens in the pick and roll. Pat Connaughton can set screens. He could come off flares, and same thing with Bryn. So like, there's no excuse for Trae to take possessions off on defense. You should, if you're not gonna defend him well, then you should at least make him waste energy. Like, make him get tired. That is literally your only hope.
Well, that's going to happen first off, because that is Nate McMillan's game plan, is to run fast, right? This is what kind of gets or gotten Embiid tired. And he came out and told you after the series was over, I was playing with a torn meniscus, right? So that's one thing. At the pace, if it's fast, in my opinion, is always to the favor of Atlanta, because that's the type of game you want. Now, I keep looking around, man. I'm sorry, but I'm babysitting my little damn dog, and I know he's trying to take a shit somewhere. I can feel it. I can feel it, Kev. He's circling around. I promise you, dog. I promise you, he's about to take a shit this whole time. His ass is kind of tucking in. Hey. Okay, I'm sorry. Back to the show. Anyways, goddamn, I forgot where I was at, Kev. I'm talking about the the Milwaukee Bucks and the. Go ahead.
You were talking about Nate McMillan's game plan of playing fast.
Right. So that is what benefits, in my opinion, Atlanta. Okay, now this is what I honestly believe. I believe Bud is trying to do whatever he fucking can to make the adjustments, man. But you can't make the right adjustments that are going to be good enough if you can't, A, stop one player, and if you as a defense can't gain an advantage by cheating. This is the verbiage. Trey keeps this defense honest. Teague and everyone was going under the screen because they knew if they topped him on the screen, A, he could throw up, some quick James Harden shit and get a foul, or he could drive and get a step ahead of you because you've lost a step fighting that screen to get around it. Right? So now you're out of position. The guy who's probably Capella or Collins just screened your ass, and now he's heading down. And now you got Giannis sitting there by himself like, what the fuck? Okay, am I going to back up? And this was well, you just can't stop it. That's the thing. That's what I'm trying to say. You cannot stop that. You have to make decisions. Either you're going to commit or you're not. And when you have someone that Trey has been able to execute it, and make it work, this is the type of game you see. Now, what happens when it doesn't work? Then you got Kevin Huerter that goes off, right? Then you got other players that can get involved. You can double Trey. You have to do that, right? And Giannis has to play more outside of the paint, which Bud tried. And when he tried it, you saw Giannis get a foul because he put his hand on Trae Young's face, for what it's worth. I don't even think that was a foul. So all in all, man, I'm looking at that game and I'm looking at the adjustments. This is all I'm going to say, and I'll leave it at that, because I looked at these box scores. This is how you know these coaches are good, Kev. All these teams that are winning, they're coming out in the third quarter with a different type of adjustment and execution to match their opponent. You saw that happen with the Suns run. You've seen that happen many times with the Clippers, actually. And now just look at this number. First quarter, this is Milwaukee Bucks in Atlanta. Score, first quarter, Milwaukee 28-25. Second quarter points scored, Milwaukee 31, Atlanta 29. So Milwaukee's already come out on top, right? They've already come out winning by 5 points. Third quarter, points scored, Atlanta 34, Milwaukee 26. And then last quarter, it's 28-28. So you can see that run there, those adjustments made, and it turns into the favor of the coach who knows how to make those adjustments. That's why you're seeing Nate McMillan be a better coach than Mike Budenholzer. That's another thing to behold. Now, I say all that just to bring it back home and say Milwaukee is still the better team, and they should put Atlanta away. But when you see those types of numbers and when you see those types of things that the coaches are doing, as far as these adjustments, give you cause for pause, man. All I'm saying.
Yeah, well, most people, including myself, I had Milwaukee in 5. So to my, Hawks won their game. We'll see if Milwaukee sweeps the rest of the way. To Bud's credit, outside of that, and speaking on the adjustments, to Bud's credit, he did find something at the end of the game by putting Giannis at the 5,
He
and
did.
they just started switching everything. And Giannis switched on to Trey a couple of times. I felt like he sagged a little bit off, but
Mm-hmm.
again, back to the point earlier, like he has a long wingspan, he's
Yes,
tall,
sir.
so he could get up there and contest the jumper. And Trey didn't make a 3 over Giannis. So they were able to get stops, but they weren't rebounding. Like, John Collins and Capella were just out hustling them and
Mm-hmm.
grabbing the offensive rebound. So that's something that they can do. Go small. By no means use it as a starting lineup. Start Brook, but then Bud finally found out that he can play Giannis at the 5, and they got some good
Yeah.
minutes, but it's all
Mm-hmm.
going to be a matter of, tinkering and gang rebounding and closing out the defensive possession. And then
maybe Portis helping you. What the fuck was that? Did you see that shimmy 3, Kev? Like Portis was so deep, and that's what I mean by the dropping back, man. They're so scared for Trey to just come in on you that they're just dropping, bro. Like, why are you that far on? I'm sorry to cut you off, but you saying that and those defensive adjustments, that's the type of shit that needs to be taken care of right away, and it's got to be taken care of next game.
Yeah, for sure. But we'll see what happens. Bucks still have a chance to close out this series. They look to tie it on Friday, tomorrow. They look to tie it 1-1 to head to Atlanta. The other series that is happening, the Western Conference Finals between the Suns and the Clippers. The Clippers, for the third round in a row, start down 0-2 after a hell of a finish in Game 2 with Paul George missing the last 2 free throws. 5,000 reviews later, DeAndre Ayton gets an alley-oop to win the game. And 5,000 reviews later, they end up winning the game. And they take a 2-0 lead. And now, to the Clippers' credit, they've started out all these series, trying out different things. And then they come back in Game 3, and they figure out what works. Credit to Ty Lue. And they're able to bounce back. And in the first 2 series, they tied. For this series, however, Chris Paul is coming back. Chris Paul missed the first 2 games out with he tested positive for COVID, so he was in the health and safety protocols. But now he's healthy. He's back for Game 3. Devin Booker will be playing with a mask, so take that however you wish. But the Suns look to take a 3-0 tie. Clippers still playing a 3-0 lead, excuse me. And the Clippers still playing without Kawhi, out with the ACL injury. Still hasn't been determined that he's out for the rest of the playoffs or a timetable for him to return, but not looking to those hopes of him coming back, not looking too high.
Hell no.
So,
hell no.
Game 3 tonight, Suns look to take a commanding 3-0 lead in the WCF. How do you see this game playing out?
Right. So if I'm looking at this game from a numbers perspective, from a gambling perspective, so let me put my gambling hat on. It's tricky. It's very tricky. Suns are up 2-0. They're going to Clippers land, or Laker land, if you will. They're going to play at the Staples Center. And even though they've beat them, they're only -1. And that's with CP3 coming back, right? No line movement, really, with the news of CP3 coming back. Which is probably the best player for that team, especially in the playoffs, right? So if the line is not budging, even though the 60% of the public is on Phoenix, like, why isn't this number really working? The number doesn't reflect what everyone is doing. So I look at this game as this. We're not even talking about Game 2, man, if Paul George makes his free throws. It's a completely different discussion, man. If Paul George makes his free throws, take it a step further. If Zubac wouldn't have absorbed that pick, right, and kind of gets up just maybe a little bit more, he could probably distract, Ayton in some way, shape, or form and getting a clean look at the alley-oop. Perfect throw for what it's worth. I mean, it had to be where it was for him to get that in that short of time. So all in all, it was a game that wasn't dominated by Phoenix. Now, let me take it a step further, man. and why I feel that the Clippers could really win tonight. And I know it's a weird take, man, but it's all good. With CP3 coming in today, in my opinion, the Clippers really don't have to make a lot of adjustments. Well, first off, they know him. First off, they know how he plays. But they kind of gotten CP3 play out of campaign. Campaign went off. Career high, bro. Couldn't be stopped, right? And he literally played that type of point guard game that CP3 plays to a certain degree. And what I mean by the game he plays is he was running that pick and roll. He was driving to his left with the one-handed teardrops, right? And he was making moves that honestly just could not be stopped. He was playing the type of play or scheme that Chris Paul's really going to play, because honestly, the Clippers are good. But when Chris Paul gets into that zone to where he's calling picks and creating switches and mismatches, that he's going to get that perimeter shot or he's going to get that lob. And that's exactly what campaign did against them. So it's not really that big of adjustment than just really making sure that Chris Paul doesn't get the easy lobs and gets to his spot easily. Second thing, Chris Paul is not coming off an injury, right? So the rust off of an injury is different than the rust off of just straight rest. It's a lot easier to kick off rust than it is rehab injury rust, if you will. So this could really get ugly for the Clippers. But I think the books know that, and I believe the Sharps know that. And because you have Chris Paul coming back, why doesn't the line show that? So all in all, that's my long-ass narrative to say I believe, man, that the Clippers are going to outright win this game today. I do believe it.
Yeah, the Clippers found some stuff in game 2 that worked. To your point, they could have won that game if not for a couple of miscues.
Yes,
but
sir.
They found some stuff during the course of the game that worked. Primarily Patrick Beverley on Devin Booker. Now with Chris Paul back, the equation changes because Campaign played really good, and now he's going to be coming off the bench. So now
Yes,
that's
sir.
someone in the second unit that you're going to have to deal with. And the second unit for the Clippers has been a mixed bag. In game 1, it was really good. In game 2, it was so-and-so. So interesting to see what happens there. I'm really intrigued to see who steps up, because besides Paul George and Reggie Jackson, no one's doing a lot on the offensive end in this series.
Yes, sir. Talk about it. Talk about it.
Yeah, the small lineup will be another interesting point, because it has had its moments where it's shined. It has had its other moments where DeAndre Ayton just completely dominates them, as he should. So that'll be something to monitor. But the Clippers are not dead. Like, they could still win this series, and with what they proved in the first round, the second round, like, albeit Phoenix is a better team than the Jazz and the Mavs. They're still a good team in their own right. So
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
They're not, like, if they lose tonight, then yeah, they're done. But especially if Kawhi's not coming back, because they really need Kawhi to just overall win this series. Like, I don't think they win this series, the Clippers, without Kawhi, but they can still make it competitive for sure. I mean, they were in the first 2 games.
Yeah.
Even without Kawhi, and even while still figuring things out, and even while having to go 6 grueling games with Utah. So it'll all depend on tonight. So we'll see what happens for sure.
Who do you think wins tonight, Kev?
I think Phoenix wins.
Really?
Yeah, I think the Suns win.
Wow.
Yeah, I think Phoenix pulls it out, and this series will be a wrap. So that'll be interesting to see for sure. Speaking of things being a wrap, we'll close it out on this note. The show is going to be wrapping up right now, but before we do, in my estimation, the competition in the Olympics for men's basketball is officially wrapped up. It hasn't even started, but it wrapped up with Team USA announcing their full team. And their full team reads as follows: Kevin Durant, Damian Lillard, Devin Booker, Jason Tatum, Bradley Beal, Chris Middleton, Zach LaVine, Bam Adebayo, Draymond Green, Drew Holiday, Kevin Love, and Jeremy Grant. As usual, a very stacked roster, and that is without James Harden and LeBron and AD and Steph and Kyrie and all these different people and Chris Paul and so and so.
Mhm.
All that to say that the competition for silver medal for second place will be really, really fun to watch in this year's Olympics. You're an American, for the record. You're American. I'm Puerto Rican, so I could give less of a crap of what happens there. The U.S. is winning gold, so again, the battle for silver will be interesting. But you, as an American, like what were your thoughts when you saw that?
Kev, I witnessed the original and the only dream team in real time. Right? Um, there's never going to be a dream team like that, in my opinion, because the game of basketball has literally been evened out. Right? So now this is why we've talked about it. You're seeing more European players come on board. You're seeing a lot of drafting come from abroad. You're seeing a lot more Cameroonian players, Canadian players, Nigerian players, just all across the board, man. Players are playing. And that's because this is the whole earth is flat theory. And once you made access, and when I mean access, and I'm sounding like an old ass here, but once you turned on the interwebs, and everyone now who has a computer could watch Kobe Bryant highlights from '96 and grew up watching, KD and LeBron and Steph Curry now in the more present form, and that tide is turning even past the LeBron and Curry era. You're seeing that these players are learning a lot faster. They're being active, and they are being molded a lot younger, and they are being able to have talent a lot quicker. And it's because they are absorbing so much information in real time that you're having these, I want to call them, man, these hybrid players, these players who can think about the game in different mindsets. One, if you want to say from a hypothetical mindset at what could possibly happen, and then one from a more factual mindset, and that is what will happen and can happen. And these young kids are able to operate in and out of this kind of plane. And so, not to get too far off, but I'm saying is don't be surprised by the talent that you see even in the Olympics, right? These young guys, these young no names that are going to play from these small ass countries, bro, where there's no market but international soccer, right? Play ball and play real good. Don't be surprised if you see that. Don't be surprised if you see, because of just how American basketball works, that Team USA gets smacked a game or two, right? Or they bring it to them a game or two. Maybe. What I mean by smacked, let me clarify my comments. I'm not saying go and lose by 20 or something like that. What I'm saying smacked is you're actually making them play ball like they would play an NBA game. Because every Olympic game for Team USA should be an exhibition game. I'm sorry, bro. That's the way it should work. But that's just not where we are now, man. It's not where we are. So do not be surprised when you see some of these native-born small country teams really try to bring their best to these players. But what I like about the roster is it isn't a bunch of quote-unquote rejects. I don't even want to call him reject, but why the fuck is Kevin Love on the squad, bro? Why is he there? He's taking up room. So with more information coming out, Kev, I'll just say that I'm happy with the roster. It should be an exhibition game. But also at the same time, I hope they don't really go out and ball, especially Kevin Durant and these players that are coming off injury.
Yeah, they won't need to. For most games, they'll probably ball for 2 quarters and the game will be over. To your point, evaluating the rosters, and I just mentioned it, Team USA's weakness for the last couple of years has always been the center spot. They've won gold the past couple of years and the last 3 Olympics, but outside of Dwight in 2008, they haven't had a capable set. Well, 2016 they had Boogie. Boogie was still good. But in 2012, they had Tyson Chandler as their starter. Like, no disrespect to Tyson Chandler, but
He was okay.
yeah, he was okay.
New York Nick, he was
but if
gritty.
but if he's your best center,
Yeah.
that's a problem.
Yeah.
So right now their best center would be Bam. Like Bam's okay. Draymond is in there. Kevin Love is in there. But with the versatility they have now in international play, you can't just play a small ball lineup. You're gonna get destroyed. But with the top end talent they have, with KD, with everyone else, the defensive versatility and the perimeter, they'll be fine. So like, well, I definitely agree with your point. Like the game has expanded, and like you see these different countries have, their golden age, quote unquote, of like their best basketball with Argentina, with Spain, with Serbia, and all these different countries. The fact of the matter is, with the U.S. involved and they bring out their best team, it's gold or bust. Like if the U.S. don't get gold, it's a disappointment. Like the U.S. got the last time the U.S. didn't win gold, is in 2004 where they won bronze, and it was a disappointment. Like people look at 2004 has a disappointment, and it was bronze. Like if Puerto Rico wins bronze, I will be ecstatic out of my mind. But they have the more talent. So while I do agree, and like the past couple Olympics, there's always been those games. Like the U.S. has had those games where they're kind of pushed and they win by like 8 or 7. In 2012, it was Spain. In the 2016, I think Australia gave them a run for their money. And the final, I think it was Serbia that gave them a tight contested game. So for sure, there's going to be games that they're going to compete against the top nations besides them. But for the most part, it should be a wash. And of course, they should win gold. Like their gold is theirs to lose for sure. Like as much as the talent pool has become neutral, as you said, if the U.S. take out their A team, they're gonna win gold. If they take out their B team, it might be a little bit close, but they're still gonna pull it out. And in this case, it is kind of a B team because you got Jeremy Grant, you got Drew Holiday, you got Kevin Love, all great players, but you're missing out on Harden, on Steph, and Kyrie. Like that's your A team. So this is more of a B team. But even then, they're still heavy favorites. Like it's not the World Cup where they had Donovan Mitchell as their best player. That was like their E team. That was like their E team, and they got nowhere close to winning. But the U.S. is going to be okay.
I like your point, Kev. To where you made to where teams can't really play big or small on them because Team USA can play small and have Draymond in there as a big and do pretty damn good, right? So I think that is a great big duo with Bam Adebayo, who's an actual big who can play big, and Draymond Green, who's a small big who can also play big. I like that, to be honest with you. I think that's a good combination, especially when you got KD playing.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see. Obviously, FIBA, different game, different rules, different style of play, more organized basketball. But Olympics will be entertaining to see. I mean, you got a lot of teams already there. In the next couple of weeks, we'll have qualifying tournaments. Puerto Rico is one of them. I don't have high hopes at all, but we'll see what happens. We'll definitely be, watching from afar. Of course, that's in China. There's no way I'm going over there to Tokyo. It's in Tokyo. I'm sorry. Tokyo, China. I don't know. But there's no way you're catching me over there. But yeah, we'll definitely be watching, and we'll definitely be watching some good basketball. A lot of good NBA players, but just some good basketball players from all around the world. NBA, and as great as the NBA is, that isn't the only home for good basketball players. Like there's good basketball players all over the world. So and the NBA will be over, but we got the Olympics, so will be some fun time now in the summer for sure. Every 4 years, well in this case 5 because of COVID. But we got some fun basketball over here in the summer. And with that, we will wrap up this tonight's show, Derl and Kev NBA show for tonight, June 24th, 2021. Talked about the head coaching vacancies. By the way, Mavericks, nothing has come out on the Mavericks front since the last thing I said about Jason Kidd being in the negotiations. The most recent thing I read was that Michael Finley, someone I mentioned that was in the reports, is going to stay
Mm-hmm.
with the franchise, but Tim Bontemps, who tweeted that out, didn't say whether he was getting a raise or he was just staying in his spot. So nothing on the Dallas front as of now. But we got some new head coaches. We'll be getting more as the weeks progress.
Mm-hmm.
Conference finals will be continuing. So next week, who knows? Probably Phoenix and LA will be done by next week. So we'll be interested to see what happens there. But that's it for tonight. You can follow us on Twitter for Derl at it's Derl. It's at it's Derl. For me, it's at NAutoCav785. You can check us out on the breakdown_sports. You check out our website, of course. Check us out Mondays and Thursdays between streams and spaces. We alternate, but
Mm-hmm.
to know what we're doing, gotta follow us on Twitter for that. So we'll be back here on Monday. But until then, stay safe, take care, enjoy basketball. Some great basketball being played right now. Don't let the ratings talk and no stars being involved fool you. There's some great
No.
basketball being played right now.
Whoa, whoa,
So
whoa,
ratings are
whoa.
actually up for sure.
Yes. Talk
So
about it. Talk about
yeah.
it, Kev. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Talk about that. Because I mean, we can end that shit, but ratings are up, dog. That's facts.
Yeah, we got some new superstars on the rise. So
Mm-hmm.
whether you're a diehard, whether you're a casual, there's something to watch here. So
Mm-hmm.
stay safe, enjoy the games, and we'll see y'all next week. Peace.